Welcome everyone. Today we are lucky to have with us Catherine Trapskin. She is a speech and language pathologist from Minneapolis Public Schools. And she's another guest presenter who has been to the face-to-face class at the University of Minnesota to offer this information to our students in the past. So I'm very glad to have you here today. Welcome, Catherine.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to become a speech and language pathologist.
Yeah, a little bit about me. My mom is actually from Ecuador, and I grew up in a bilingual household. I spoke both English and Spanish in the home. And when I actually went to preschool, about 4 or 5 years old, the story is really interesting. So I was looking for a barrette. I had lost my barrette in my classroom, and I went to my teacher and I said, I lost my, and I didn't know the word in Spanish. And so I just said, oh, well, you're not going to know this, but it's called bincha. I'm not sure what it's called in English. And my preschool teacher, who, me, little girl teacher, very, very tall, leaned over and put her hands on her hips and said, you need to tell your mom to speak English to you in the house and stop speaking Spanish.
Oh boy.
So I went home and told my mom in tears. It really had a big effect on my identity and on my language, my language skills as well in Spanish. And my mom, not knowing any better, wanted to listen to what the teacher said and stopped speaking Spanish to us in the house. So fast forward several years later, I lost a lot of my Spanish language skills, and it really had a big impact on me. And I didn't want other children to experience that, and I knew I wanted to get into an education, and particularly knowing that the difficulty I had communicating with my own family, my own mother, my aunts and uncles, my grandmother, by not having that first language, Spanish, really solid. I knew how debilitating that was and how terrible that felt to not be able to communicate with family members. So I thought speech and language therapy would be a really good fit, and that I could kind of identify with people with the communication difficulties, because it's frustrating and it's really it's a tough road to walk. So
it's wonderful that you can be there to help parents, because I still hear that now. Parents are worried that they're going to confuse their children if they speak to them in their own language. And they don't realize that it's even worse if they don't know English well, to speak broken English to the children, and how they pick up on those.
Yeah, absolutely. And
those habits.
And I really do work to advocate for our English learner families and our students, and encouraging families to maintain that home language. And then even despite if their child has a speech or language disability, that they can still learn two languages, and it's best for everybody.
It is, because then they can talk to their grandparents or their aunts and uncles, and maybe have other opportunities for jobs like interpreting in the future.
Totally,
or bilingual speech and language pathology.
Yes, we need more.
Definitely. So yes, no, I'm glad that you're able to do that.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about how much education is required to become a speech and language pathologist?
Yep. To become a speech-language pathologist, you need at least a master's degree. So you'll get your bachelor's degree with some coursework in speech and language or communication sciences and disorders. So there's some prerequisites to be able to apply to and enter graduate school. So some people will take those prerequisites through their bachelor school career, or they may decide to, let's say they can major in art, and then they decide they want to be a speech language pathologist. You can still make up those credits and then go to get to your master's degree.
So then how and where did you begin with your professional career?
Yeah, good question. So when I graduated with my master's, I actually went down to Honduras and worked at a home for orphan and abandoned children for a year, doing speech therapy in Spanish, and I was also a caretaker on the orphanage. After that, I went and worked for a school district in the Chicagoland area that was predominantly Hispanic, and I worked in an early childhood center there doing speech and language therapy. And then shortly thereafter, I moved up here to Minnesota and started working for Minneapolis Public Schools. So I have worked from early childhood all the way up to high school age, and currently my role in the district is I manage our special education English learners team. So I have a great group of interpreters that I get to work with. I get to work all around the city at different schools where there is a high population of English learner students who also have special education needs. So it's a really interesting.
It sounds like
a great
it's
gig.
so enjoyable.
Yeah, it's been a great gig. Yeah.
So where do speech and language pathologists work other than in schools?
Yeah, I love this profession because really there's a wide variety of places where an SLP can work. So we work in schools, outpatient clinics, nursing homes, hospitals, home health agencies will go on home visits, and also we have the option of also conducting our own private practices. So lots of places.
Yeah, 'cause I think it's interesting how some of you also work with people who are rehabilitating from strokes or from accidents.
Yes. Yeah. So adults all the way to newborns. I mean, that's really who we work with.
You really have a wide variety.
Yeah.
And what does a speech and language pathologist do in schools?
Yeah, an SLP in the schools they'll screen students to find out if they are requiring any further speech and language testing. We evaluate speech and language skills. So if a teacher or a parent has concerns about their child's speech and language skills once they're in the school system, we can help with that evaluation and conduct those evaluations. We also decide with the team whether or not the child is eligible for speech and language services. So again, conducting evaluations. And then we will, after the evaluation, if the child does qualify, we work with the team to develop an individualized education plan for that student. We also help to develop curriculum, design programs, choose textbooks and materials that help children learn. We research ways to help children do their best in school. And then we also give resources and information to parents and families to be able to best help their children in the home and help them understand how their child best communicates.
And so where do SLPs work in schools?
Yeah.
And where in particular?
Yeah, we work in the regular education classrooms, and we also work in special education classrooms. So those self-contained classrooms, like our autism classrooms, those children with more significant developmental cognitive disabilities, children that are learning disabled, physically or other health impaired. Deaf, hard of hearing. We also work in early childhood classrooms as well as in birth to 3. So we do home visits as well.
Yes.
So lots of different places.
Again, a lot of variety, and I like that.
Yeah, it's never boring, that's for sure.
So what if a student were to qualify for speech and language services?
Yep, so if a child qualifies for speech and language services, we'll develop something called an individualized education plan, or IEP. So this really has to contain certain information about the child, and we develop goals that are very unique to that child's particular needs. So, and in this development, we really are asking for information from the child's teacher, from the parent, from other professionals who work with the student to be able to develop that plan in a way that is best serves the needs of that child throughout the school year and throughout the school day. So we've got the child's current performance, the child's annual goals and objectives, special education service minutes. So some students will get maybe 30 minutes a week of special education or speech and language service minutes. Other children may get, maybe a couple hours a week of special education service minutes. And then we'll also list some accommodations and adaptations.
Can you give an example of what an accommodation or an adaptation might be?
Sure. So an accommodation may be that the student may benefit from being in the front of the classroom, for example, or the student might be, it might be beneficial for that student to have some help with note-taking skills or something like that. So, anything that would be beneficial for that student to be able to help that student be successful in school, we could write an accommodation. And by law, the IEP is actually a legally binding document. So by law, we are required to provide those services to that student no matter where they go in the state of Minnesota, we happen to be in the state of Minnesota, or, anywhere across the country. This is a legal binding document that travels with that student everywhere that they go. So the teachers and service providers know what the child's needs are and how to best accommodate for that student and best serve that student.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So who do you work with on the IEP team then, or on the special education team?
Yeah, I love being a part of an IEP team. So again, we really collaborate really closely with the parent. They are always a part of the IEP team. It's very, very important that the parent is involved. We also collaborate with the regular education teacher. If a special education teacher is involved, like a resource teacher, we'll also add them to the team as well, or work with them on the team. If the child is an English learner, we'll add them. We'll add the ESL teacher as well to the IEP team, because they have a lot of great information, and again, they would be able to provide some great adaptations for that student as an English learner. And if the student has a hearing loss, we will bring in an audiologist or deaf hard of hearing teacher. And if the child has other physical needs, we might bring in an occupational therapist, physical therapist, social workers are also involved.
A lot of specialists, and sometimes you see administrators involved, and
really it's whoever, it's really whoever is involved in the education of that student and supporting that student.
Yeah, and you just never know, depending on the disability, what type of a specialist might be involved with the student.
Right.
It varies from student to student.
Right, and some parents might bring in like an advocate or a cultural liaison, for example, and so that's another person that can definitely be a part of the IEP team.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Catherine. This concludes part 1 of our 3-part video presentation for this module with Catherine Trapskin, Speech-Language Pathologist from Minneapolis Public Schools. Coming up next will be communication disorders. Thank you.